Today is Thursday, April 16th, so we are on day 17 in skills. And before we get started into our reader story, I want us to go over our letter sounds. And I have added our few new sounds that we've learned recently. The CE together makes the S sound. The SE together makes the S sound. And these are sounds, these are letter teams that you will see at the end of a word for the S sound. We learned that the KN together, the K is silent, and it's at the beginning of a word, and it makes the N sound. We already know these. Oi, ow, all, j, b, l, e, oo, and as in book, qu, or, buzzy, ng, k, z, y, x, w, g, z, a, sh, ch, n, t, d, or, r, e, ah. All right, and we have a new letter sound that we're actually going to work on today, and it is the W sound with the WH. We'll get to that in a little bit. Right now, we are going to read Dark Clouds and Wind, and I don't think you have that in your kitty cat book, so we'll read it on the board. You do have access to it on the digital link where the digital reader is. So, if you want to go back after this and read it with mom and dad or grandma and grandpa, you can go ahead and do that sometime in a little bit. But for right now, we'll read it on the board together, and then we will do our reader questions. Before we read it, we are going to see words with the S sound spelled with a C. We'll see the S sound spelled with a CE and an SE in words like house, chance, Spencer, face, glances, and place. You'll also see some double spellings with double L in Jill, double T in matter, double F in stuff, double P in pepper, and double T in shutters. And we'll see some two-syllable words, which we've been working on for a few weeks now, in morning and finish. And today's read aloud story in listening and learning is Dark Clouds and Wind. And it's about what the Spencers do when they see dark clouds off to the west. Some of the vocabulary you're going to hear in the story is basement. A basement is a part of a building that is entirely below ground or maybe partially underground. Shutters. Shutters are outside covers for a window that open and close like a door. Most of us have shutters on our houses, but they normally don't close on our houses today. You're going to hear the word darts. Darts in this story means to run or move quickly or suddenly in a particular direction. All right, let's get to our reader story, and then we will just keep on moving. All right, let me find my reader finger. All right, dark clouds and wind. The next morning, when the Spencers wake up, the sun is out. Larks sing in the treetops, socks and pets you can see some clouds coming in out here. The wind's starting to blow. It looks like there's a storm off to the west, says Mr. Spencer. The clouds get darker and the wind picks up. I don't like the look of it, Mr. Spencer says to his wife. Let's pack up and take the children down into the storm shelter just to be safe. The Spencers pick up their picnic things. They stuff the food in the picnic basket. Grace grabs the cups and napkins. They take the basket down into the storm shelter. Let's check out that picture. So they're taking all of their picnic stuff in the basket. You can see the dark clouds in the back, and they're going down into the storm shelter. The storm shelter is like a basement. It is a safe place where the Spencers can take shelter in a storm. Once they are down in the shelter, Mr. Spencer starts to lock up the shutters. No, Grace shouts, not yet. Pepper's still out there. Mr. Spencer darts out of the shelter to get the dog. Soon he is back. He is dripping wet, but he has Pepper in his arms. Let's check out this picture. There we are, and there's Pepper the dog, all safe and sound. All right, you guys pull out 13.2 from your kitty cat book, and we will answer our questions. 13.2 in your kitty cat book looks like this. Dark clouds and wind. There we go. All right. I'll give you a second to find 13.2 in your kitty cat book and grab your pencil. Number 1 says, what did Mr. Spencer see as they finished up lunch? What did Mr. Spencer see as they were finishing up lunch? He saw something out in the west part of the sky. Mr. Spencer sees dark clouds off to the west. So, let's restate our question and our answer. Start with a capital, end with punctuation, neat handwriting, finger spaces, and good spelling, okay? What did Mr. Spencer see as they finished up lunch? Mr. capital M, Mr. And Spencer has a capital because that's a proper noun. That's his name, and names have to have a capital. Mr. Spencer sees dark clouds off to the west as they finished up lunch. As they, and we can just copy that from our question, finished up lunch. Finished up lunch. What comes at the end? Our period. What did Mr. Spencer see as they finished up lunch? Mr. Spencer sees dark clouds off to the west as they finished up lunch. We used that, Mr. Spencer. We said sees as they finished up lunch. We used several words from our question and our answer, so we know we have restated the question and our answer. We used capitals in their proper places. We used punctuation, we wrote neatly and used finger spaces, and we spelled everything correctly. Great job. Number 2, what do the Spencers do when the clouds get darker and the wind picks up? What did the Spencers do? They packed up their picnic and they went to the storm shelter. So let's put that in a complete sentence. The Spencers, let's start with the Spencers. Capital T, capital S, because that's their last name, and all names have to have a capital. The Spencers pack up and take the kids down to the storm shelter. Take the kids down to the storm shelter when the wind picks up. And we can copy that straight from our question. When the clouds get darker and the wind picks up. When the wind picks up. Period at the end. Now, my answer says, the Spencers pack up and take the kids down to the storm shelter when the wind picks up. You don't have to write exactly what I write. You can write your own sentence, but you have to have the correct answer, okay? So you could say, the Spencers pack up and go to the storm shelter when the clouds get darker. You could say that. You could say, when the clouds get darker, the Spencers go to the storm shelter. Okay, that's a complete sentence, and you're restating the question. It does not have to match mine perfectly, as long as you have a complete sentence with capitals, you have answered the question, you used punctuation, and you restated the question in your answer, okay? So, something really close to this is just fine. Alright, let's flip our paper over and go to number 3. Number 3 says, what is a storm shelter? What is a storm shelter? What can we say a storm shelter is? Some people may say, my basement is a storm shelter. In the story it was a basement. They said it was a basement. So let's just put this in a complete sentence. Capital A, storm shelter is a safe place Now, in our story, it was a safe place where the Spencers took shelter. Where the Spencers, capital S because that's a name, took shelter in a storm. That is what a basement is in our story. Okay? Well, a storm shelter. You could say a storm shelter is a basement. Okay? Just make sure you answer the question accurately. Use capitals, punctuation, complete sentence, Write neatly with your finger spaces and spell your words properly. Alright, number 4. What did Grace shout as Mr. Spencer started to lock up the shutters? What did Grace shout? Grace shouted that Pepper was still outside. The dog was still outside. So, let's put this in a complete sentence. What did Grace shout as Mr. Spencer started to lock up the shutters? Starting with a capital G for Grace. Grace shouted that Pepper is a capital P because that's a name. Capital P and Pepper because that's the dog's name. Pepper was still outside when Mr. capital M Spencer capital S, that's his name, started to lock up the shutters. We can copy that straight from our question. Started to lock up the shutters. And what comes at the end? Our period. Can't forget that. Alright. What did Grace shout as Mr. Spencer started to lock up the shutters? Grace shouted that Pepper was still outside when Mr. Spencer started to lock up the shutters. We restated our question and our answer. We used capitals where they were needed. We used punctuation at the end. We wrote neatly, used our finger spaces, and spelled all of our words properly. Alright, remember your answers do not have to match my answers exactly, but they do need to be accurate. And complete sentences, and capitals where needed, and punctuation, neat handwriting, finger spaces. Alrighty, good job guys. We're going to move on to our new spelling for the W sound. The WH spelling for the W sound. I don't know if you can see this. Maybe you can. Hope you can see it. WH. That's our new spelling for the W sound. And I have a spelling tree. There we go. So, you guys learned in kindergarten that the W makes the W sound, as in wet, winter, switch, swell, those kind of words where there's just one W and it makes the W sound. There is another spelling for the W and it's WH. Now, there is a little bit of a difference when we use the WH. It's kind of a breathy sound. It's kind of like a wh, like you're blowing, almost like you're going to blow a candle out, but it's wh. So, well, when you say well, if you put your hand right in front of your mouth and say well, you can feel that breath come out with the WH. Well, white, whimper, and there are several other words that have the WH. Wheel, like the wheel on a bike or a car. Whisker. Whoops, like uh-oh, whoops. What? Our words. We've seen the WH letter team before in our tricky words. What? Which? When? So it's not brand new. You've seen it before. So when it's at the beginning, sometimes, not always, as in wet and winter, there's no WH in wet and winter. Sometimes though, at the beginning of a word, you'll have a WH. And it's a little more breathy. It's like a wheel, whisker, whoops, when, which, what, and there are others. There are lots of words that start with the WH, okay? So, and we'll come back and review this, I'm sure, at some point during our lessons. But this is your introduction to the W spelled with the WH. Well, white, whimper, will, whisker, whoops, what, which, when. And in your lesson plans, your parents have a list of newly decodable words that have the WH at the beginning. You guys can play around with these. You can play games with them. You can read them off, whatever you want to do. But it's good exposure to see those words with the WH at the beginning. All right. Let's see. Let's go over our spelling words. For this week, they are still the same as they have been every day this week. And tomorrow, on Friday, we will do a little spelling quiz. If you want to. I'm going to call them out. If you want to do a little quiz with me, you can. Alright, we have maps, mice, hammer, trimmed, skipped, scrub, space, could, knapsack, and blouse. So make sure you're doing some spelling practice. Make it fun. Do something fun with it. And that's all for today's skills lesson, and I will see you tomorrow.